Rajeev Gowda ji, 13 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Chairman, sir. So I would like to start by congratulating the Finance Minister on one of the vision statements that she has laid out in this budget, and that is the idea that every home will get piped water. Many years ago in the 1980s, Karnataka had a minister called Abdul Nazir Saab, and he ensured that drinking water was provided to every village. Now, this proposal is going to take that water and provide it to every household, which should be their right. It is very nice to see pictures, beautiful pictures of women carrying pots of water. That's good for the artists, but that is drudgery for the women and children who spend huge amounts of their time and energy transporting water for their daily domestic needs. It's time we made that history. But sir, translating that vision into reality requires funding, requires a plan. And that is not clear for me in this particular budget. There is a budget allocated to the National Rural Drinking Water Program. It's about 9,150 crores, but that is not enough for anything which is of this magnitude in terms of its ambition. And when you look at other water-related programs, whether it is the Blue Revolution programs, whether it is the Ganga program, whether it's the River Conservation program, they seem to be facing budget cuts. So what is the mismatch between the vision and the ability to put money behind that vision? That is the question that I would ask. This is an urgent issue. Recently, we've seen in Chennai the kind of challenges that people are facing in terms of accessing drinking water or water for domestic use. This is the result of ecologically damaging activities, unsustainable urbanization that has taken place over decades. This is a story that is repeated not just in Chennai, but in every other city, in every town that is urbanizing without paying attention to ecological needs and to water. But when you think about water and how to ensure that people get access to drinking water, the solutions that many of my learned colleagues are offering are grand engineering solutions like interlinking rivers. So that can be an ecological disaster. What we need to pay attention to are decentralized solutions and attempts to ensure that engineering is in the form of reuse, recycle, and those sorts of methods that will ensure that whatever is used, a large amount of that which is non-portable is put to better use through better engineering of housing, better engineering of buildings, rather than these massive infrastructure projects that are being talked about. If you want examples, come to Karnataka. We will show you what we have done with farm ponds. We will show you what we have done with the largest drip irrigation project called Ramtal Marol. We will show you how inter-river basin linking can be done, for example, through the KC Valley scheme, which we get water to Bengaluru from Kaveri, and that after use is treated and uplifted to the neighboring Kolar and Chikballapur districts where I come from, and therefore that is intelligent. But large-scale, massive interlinking projects, that doesn't work. It will be an ecological disaster. So, the Finance Minister talked about the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, the concept of a Gandhipedia, etc. This reminds me, and the Economic Survey also was reminded of Gandhi's talisman, where he said, when you want to think about whether a policy is right or wrong, recall the face of the weakest person whom you have seen and ask yourself if that step that you contemplate is going to make a difference to his or her life, whether it's going to give him or her control over their life and destiny. So therefore, drawing from that talisman, let's look at this budget and the impact on certain vulnerable sections. First of all, women, half our population. So in this budget, or if you look at the difference between budget estimate 2018-19 and revised estimate 2018-19, for 100% women-oriented schemes and programs, there's a 40% decline in funding. So what's happening here? Is there no concern for 100% women-oriented programs? That's one concern. There's a lot of talk about what's being done for agriculture and for the rural sector. There's a huge amount of money that has been increased for the Kisan Samman Nidhi. But we pointed it out earlier, and I point it out again. That program helps only landowners. It helps me, but it does not help the landless labor. It does not help tenant farmers, it does not help sharecroppers, it does not help the numerous women who are now running their farms because of the increasing feminization of agriculture. And that is a huge gap that this government must address. Let's think about the investment in human capital, our health, our education, etc. So, unlike last time when we didn't see much of an increase, this time the National Rural Health Mission is up by 7%. But when you see acute encephalitis syndrome cropping up in Bihar, cropping up in Assam and elsewhere, you can understand that there's a huge problem in rural India, and a 7% increase in NRHM is hardly sufficient to be able to attain the kinds of outcomes that we want on the health front for our most vulnerable rural brethren. Further, the BJP manifesto talked about upgrading district hospitals to medical colleges. But instead, the funding allocated for that is down by 36%. So what is the statement? What is the reality? If district hospitals are upgraded, then you will see that they will serve as the foundation for high-quality health care for every district and take good medical care to every part of India. On education, last year we spent a historic low of 2.6% of GDP, and this time we only see a marginal increase. We need a massive amount of funding if we want to achieve that demographic dividend that we keep talking about. And the emphasis has to be on quality, not just on quantity as well. And there, sir, the approach of the government is to try and game the international rating system by putting funds just to a few high-quality top institutions. But you need a transformation in quality. Today there's a story about plagiarism in PhDs. This is the sort of problem that is bedeviling our education sector, and a huge amount of resources. For example, the National Research Foundation that's being set up is a good step in that direction. It will incentivize good research, creation of original knowledge, and that's the kind of change that we need across the board to ensure that quality of education improves. I would also like to compliment the Minister on that vision of opening our doors to foreign students. Many years ago, about 15, 17 years ago, I had written an article in the New Indian Express called Vishwa Vidyalaya, where I had said Vishwa Vidyalaya means that education hub of the world. And that is something that I argued was very possible for India, and the Finance Minister has echoed the same in her budget speech. But for that to happen, for India to give Harvard and Oxford a run for their money, and we can, because we offer high-quality education in English at a fraction of the cost of what it takes to go and study elsewhere in the world. But to provide that, we need to put in a lot more investment. We need to open up the doors to more players in the system without commercializing education. And I can assure you that if you engage with institutions like the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, where I used to teach, we have some experience in working with foreign students. We've had regular batches of exchange students who have come. I used to teach a course called Understanding India entirely to a group of foreign students in that class. So there is a lot that we can do. But the other side is that we spend billions of dollars in fees that are paid by our students who go abroad because they're not able to get enough quality education in our country. So there's a lot more that needs to be done at every level. I hope that new education policy will have suggestions which the government can implement in this particular context. Before I turn to the macroeconomy, I just want to flag two points. One on the defense allocation. So if you just look over the last decade or more, you will see that allocation to defense capital spending has been falling as a proportion of the defense budget. This is not a good sign when you want, more and more is being spent on pensions, on revenue expenditure, as we call it. And either we bring about dramatic reforms in defense, or we find a way to turn this around. Otherwise, our defense preparedness will be hit. And I come from the city of Bengaluru, and I know the amount of loss of GDP that has arisen because of unsustainable urban transport, because of the amount of time our most productive people spend in traffic jams, etc. So I would have loved to see much more emphasis on sustainable urban transport solutions. Every town and city that is growing, we need to put those solutions in now in a futuristic manner. We need to promote non-motorized transport. We need to change the way cities are designed, and we need to allocate more funds for projects like suburban rail and get the railway ministry to cooperate much more in ensuring that its tracks and its can be used to transport people in smaller regions rather than only on interstate transport. So turning to the macroeconomy, many of my senior colleagues have already talked about the slowdown that we are in the midst of. And it's very important that the government recognizes that we're in a slowdown. It is, every indicator. We have seen GDP sliding down. We have seen, I think Mr. Sibal talked about automobile sales being, at a 20-year low in this last quarter. So these are all signs that people are not spending. Consumption-driven growth will not happen across the board. It could be consumer staples, anything you look, everything is slowed down. We are on the verge of a recession, and it is time that we wake up and smell the coffee. So when you're in that kind of a situation, the assumptions about growth rates are very flawed, and I do not think that we are going to be anywhere close to achieving those goals. More than anything else, when things have slowed down, you might want to ask, where is this government going to get the money from, the revenue to do all this? It has been relying from day one on taxes on petroleum. And who do these taxes hurt? Those taxes and cesses are indirect taxes. They make goods and services costlier because of inflation. They hurt the poorest of the poor who face higher costs and because of this regressive move. The government also has had a great fondness for cesses. Kisan cess, Swachh Bharat cess. There's a huge cesspool of cess money that has been collected but has not been utilized for whatever purpose. And that is very, very inappropriate. We are a council of states, and every time the government uses a cess, it is ensuring that revenue is not shared with the state governments, and the state and center, the ratio of central revenue to of a share of the taxes overall, non-GST, is increasing over time compared to the states, and this is not a good thing. Where else will the government get its revenue from? It keeps saying disinvestment. What is its track record? Getting ONGC and LIC to buy other PSUs is not disinvestment. Only when the public goes out there and invests in what you're trying to sell, for example, Air India, are you close to anything that can be called disinvestment? You're going after RBI funds. You're going after foreign bonds. When this sort of a thing happens, make sure that the RBI is strengthened and that you don't take away its resources. 100%. It's already been hurt by demonetization. You're talking about foreign direct investment 100% across domains without rhyme or reason, because you're talking about opening the doors to foreign media. What's going on here? We want to know the logic behind each and every one of these agendas. And trying to say the private sector will step in with investment, not when you keep interfering in the market the way things are. You've been increasing taxes, increasing tariffs, increasing the decisions on how much of shareholding can be owned by promoters. And we keep saying we're the fastest growing economy. Yes, we are, but we are underperforming our potential, and that's something that we must bear in mind.
Conclude, Rajeev.
Over, sir. So let me just point out the previous NDA government was very much a name-changing government, but this time we have a big announcement government. 100 lakh crores for infrastructure. What we got was a committee instead. So like this, there are numerous state governments, especially run by the Congress, which have wonderful ideas. The ENAM you've already adopted. There's regulatory forbearance in Rajasthan. There's a Matrapurna scheme in Karnataka. There's so many that you can adopt and take forward. But finally, our finance minister quoted from our revolutionary social reformer, Basaveshwara. And I would also like to do so as I end my speech. One of his most famous sayings, Kadabeda, Kolabeda, Husiya Nudiyalu Beda. Do not steal, do not kill, do not lie. What does that mean in the context of a budget? It means do not rely on indirect taxes that squeeze money from the hard-earned money of the poor.
Conclude now.
It says do not let bad policies and neglect kill our farmers. And it says do not let the credibility of our data and statistics suffer. These should be the principles of Basaveshwara that guide the finance minister, and I wish her well as she takes the economy forward. Thank you very much.